Good morning, dear students. Welcome to the GST class. In the last class, we discussed with composition of GST Council, quorum, powers and functions of GST Councils. In today's class, let us discuss with the features of GST. So when it comes with the features of GST, the first feature is dual GST model. So in our country, dual model is implemented under GST Act. GST is implemented with a dual GST model where taxes will be levied by both central and state, that is CGST and SGST. Adopting the model depends upon the country decision. We have different models. In our country, we have adopted with dual GST where the tax will be levied by both the union as well as the state, and whatever the revenue generated by the state will be utilized for the development of the state, and the revenue collected from the central will be utilized by the central for the development of the overall country. And the next feature is destination based consumption tax. As we discussed in the previous classes, GST is also called as destination taxed or consumption based tax. That means the tax will be paid where the particular product is being manufactured, or where it is being purchased, or where it is being consumed. So here we will be paying the single tax. We will not pay the tax for the place of manufacturing. Instead, where exactly we are using or consuming the product, in that particular place, only for that particular place the tax is paid. So it is consumption based tax. And the next feature is tax to be subsummed. The various central and state levies were examined in order to subsum under the GST. That is, all the indirect tax is being replaced. The indirect tax is being clubbed together, and which is being taken under the GST. So here subsummed is nothing but the club. It is a combination of both the central as well as the state. So here all the indirect tax is being clubbed together and it is being taken under the GST. And the next feature is GST on exports and imports. Here, students, we have to be very clear, that is, the GST is levied on all the goods and services, but the GST will not be subject for export and imports. When it comes to the export and imports, the central sales tax is applicable, whereas the integrated GST is calculated for the transaction which takes place within the country. That means between the state, if any transaction takes place, at that time IGST will be applicable. So here the GST is not imposed on import and export. Still we have the central sales tax for the import and export of goods and services. So we will be considering the IGST, that is integrated GST, for the transaction which takes place between the two different states, that is within the country. And the next feature is the computation of GST. The computation of GST on the basis of invoice credit method. The liability under the GST will be based on the invoice issued by the supplier. So the computation of GST is clearly based on the invoice issued by the supplier. When it comes that, so this is the reason we say whenever the product is being sold or purchased or any transaction takes place, the invoice is mandatory, because without the invoice you cannot go for getting the benefit of input tax credit. If you don't have any record, if you don't have any proof or the evidence, we cannot go for enjoying the input tax credit benefit which is given from the government. So here always the invoice is very, very important, and the GST will be based on the invoice issued by the supplier. And the next feature is payment of GST. The CGST and SGST are to be paid to the accounts of central and state respectively. That is, the SGST will be applicable to a particular state, CGST will be taken by the union, and here the payment will be online. It's not manual payment. We cannot go to a particular office and pay the payment. So here everything is online, which will be much convenient for the manufacturer as well as for the consumer. So the payment system will be very convenient. So once if we have already registered based on the GST ID number what we have, identification number, with the help of that the payment of online is much easier. And the next feature is the GST network. The next feature is GST network. A GST network is a non-government company which is called as the GST network, which jointly provides the infrastructure and various services to the central as well as the state government, and even for the taxpayers and other stakeholders. So here under this particular network, it's a private, it's not under the government. So but few state government will be recruiting the Suvidha providers. Suvidha providers are the one who will be working under GST network. They are the one who will be helping the public or even the government officials and even the stakeholders in order to give a clear picture about the GST and helping them to file their returns in a much easier way. So this entire network will be working on GST. They will be giving the information about how to do the registration. Especially if any one particular manufacturer or a consumer are not in a position to understand the online registration process or online payment process, this Suvidha providers will be helping them, will be assisting the manufacturers or it can be consumers in any process for that matter. So they will be providing all the required services for and the next feature is ITC set-off, that is input tax credit. So this particular benefit will be given only for the registered GST holder. That is, any one particular dealer or a businessman or an individual who has registered under GST Act will be benefited the input tax credit. That is, the tax which we have already paid at the time of purchase. Again, no need to pay at the time of sales. So here, when it comes with the inward purchase, that means whatever the product we have utilized or used in the process of manufacture, for that particular product, no need to pay the tax after the process of that particular product. So here, that is eliminating the cascading system. Here we will not be paying the tax on tax. If you have already paid the tax in the previous supply chain, when you are producing, you need to go for fixing up the tax only for the product or the item which you have not paid the tax. And this particular benefit will be given only for the registered dealer. If any one particular person who have not registered under GST Act, this benefit will not be given. And next feature is maintenance of records. The taxpayer or any particular person who have registered under GST or even a dealer should maintain a separate books of accounts with a detailed information about the utilization of the products, or it can be input tax credit or overall sales done by that particular person. Without a clear information, we will not be getting any benefits from the GST. The various benefits which is available under the Act will not be benefited without the proper maintenance of the record. So it is very important for any dealer or a manufacturer in order to maintain the records. It can be the invoice or it can be the bill, so that if any refund is required, by producing the records you can go for getting the benefits under the GST Act. And the next feature is administration of GST. The administration of GST will be the responsibility of the GST Council. So this, the council will be fixing up the various policies, the guidelines where each and every individual has to follow. And the member of GST Council will be it will be comprising of both central as well as the state. So the decision taken by the GST Council will be on the point of both central as well as the state. So any amendments, how exactly the administration should go on, how the guidelines should be, the guidelines will be given by the GST Council. How exactly the registration process or administration should go on, that will be decided by the GST Council. And next, coming with the GST Council. As just now, as I said, the administration of GST will be decided by the GST Council. So again, when it comes to the GST Council, it is a joint forum of both, that is central as well as the state. The council makes the recommendation to central as well as the state on important issues like the tax exemption and the tax rate and the tax slabs, the threshold limits. So here all the decisions will be taken by the council. If any time any amendments required, the council will be taking a call on that particular requirement. As I told you all in the previous class, in the present current situation, if you all see, there is a discussion on the rate of tax on the vehicles. So they wanted to reduce the tax slab from 28% to 14%. So that discussion is going on. Any time that and next feature is interstate transaction and IGST mechanism. The central would levy and collect the integrated GST, that is IGST, on all the interstate supply of goods and services. And this mechanism is being designed in order to ensure that the seamless flow of input tax credit from one state to the another state. As I told, if any transaction that takes place between two different states, that time integrated GST, IGST will be applicable, so that both the states should be benefited. And this has been implemented so that there should not be any confusion between the state, and each revenue collected by separate state that will be utilized for the benefit, for the development of that particular states. And the next feature is the rate of tax. So determining a revenue rate, that is the revenue tax rate for GST, was a very difficult task. So it was not that easy to finalize the tax rate. So it has been adopted a low rate as well as the high rate, we say. That is, they have decided the low rate should be quoted for all the necessary item, that is the 5% or if 0% exempted, for which the exemption has to be given, for which product the nil rate has to be given. And the another rate is the standard rate, we say, the highest rate, that has to be given for all the luxury products and even for the precious gems and the stones. So the special rate will be given for the luxury product. So in the beginning it was not that easy task to fix up the rate. Then they started categorizing, that is, for the luxury products the standard high rate has to be given, for all the daily consumer products and necessary products the low rate tax structure is being adopted. So today we discussed with the features of GST. In the next class we will be discussing with the challenges